On this week's Music Nerd, a response to one of your responses to last week's Music Nerd, all about how much I love Spotify.
Music Nerd this week.
So last week's Music Nerd was all about how much I love Spotify, and in the spirit of Spotify, in the spirit of sharing music, I asked you guys to leave comments letting me know your favorite album of all time, and you guys did not disappoint. Let's see, we had Thampity recommending Watsky by George Watsky, RJ Lupin 6 recommending Gulag Orchestra by Beirut, The Phantom Menace 1000 recommending Days of Future Past by the Moody Blues. I have added those 3 albums to the Spotify playlist I curate, so if you want to subscribe to that playlist, there's a link to it in the description. But anyway, in response to last week's Music Nerd, Raphael had this to say on my Facebook page. He said, Dan, what do you think about the criticisms artists have had about Spotify and how much it pays? I know a musician who said this: Spotify is the devil. Spotify should be called Rob-ify. The rate that they pay artists and writers is just above criminal. For example, Lady Gaga is reported to have earned only $167 for more than 1 million plays. The fact is, you're not just cheating record companies, but you're destroying the livelihood of artists, musicians, and writers by cheating them out of revenues that sustain them and allow them to create art. I did some Googling, and while it's not the most straightforward thing in the world, figuring out how much artists make through iTunes and Spotify, I think I figured it out. And I think what I figured out, Raphael, is that your friend is pretty wrong. What I came up with is that major label artists make approximately 10 cents per 99-cent iTunes download, and to make the same from Spotify, a song needs to be streamed approximately 64 times. So approximately 1 million Lady Gaga streams divided by approximately 64 multiplied by approximately 10 cents, and Lady Gaga made approximately $1,562. Approximately. So, Raphael, that there takes much of the weight out of your friend's argument. He was off by a power of 10, but the fact remains, many artists still aren't entirely happy with how much Spotify pays out. For example, the Black Keys. In an interview last December, Patrick Carney, the drummer for the Black Keys, explained why the group has withheld their latest album, El Camino, from Spotify. He said, it still isn't at a point where you're able to replace royalties from record sales with royalties from streams. On the surface, that seems to make business sense. If hundreds of thousands of people are eagerly anticipating the release of your album and are willing to drop $10 on it, then you want to capitalize off of that as much as possible, and making the album freely available on Spotify might cut into that a little bit. In the short term, that logic holds true. Traditionally, when an album is released, there is a rush to buy it, and the artist sees a big fat check right up front that Spotify can't compete with. In the long term, though, the difference becomes a little hazier. If I download a Black Keys track from iTunes, they make 10 cents, and that's it. Never again will they make money from me for that track, no matter how many times I play it. As soon as I play that track for the 65th time, they would have actually made more money if all of those plays had come from Spotify. 65 plays is a lot, but streaming business models are still coming into their own. I mean, I've been a YouTuber for the last 5 years, and I know from experience that 1,000 video views today makes me quite a bit more than 1,000 video views did 4 years ago. And there's no reason for me to believe that the same logic won't apply to Spotify. As the service matures, the 64 stream threshold for iTunes parity should steadily decline. Even if it doesn't, though, there's another advantage that Spotify has over iTunes, and that is music discovery. I just got into the Black Keys a couple months ago. A coworker of mine recommended them to me, and even though I probably wouldn't have dropped $10 on an album right then and there was no harm in just checking them out on Spotify. And lo and behold, I liked them. Because of Spotify, the Black Keys now have a new fan, and while I might not ever get around to listening to any one of their songs 65 times, I mean, who knows how many other new fans they have because of Spotify? Who knows how many of those fans will someday pay to see them live or recommend the Black Keys to yet another friend? I've spent this whole video talking about Spotify versus iTunes, but there's a deeper level to this conversation that I would like to end on, and that is piracy versus non-piracy. Regardless of if you think Spotify is paying artists enough, the fact remains that artists are making more from Spotify than they ever will from the Pirate Bay. For far too long, the music industry has been hammering its head against the wall, trying to sue file sharers out of existence. But for every figurehead the music industry cuts off of the file sharing hydra, 2 new heads take their place. Spotify represents the first time the music industry has embraced the fundamental innovation of file sharing, that music should be openly accessible, and that rather than trying to beat file sharing in court, you have to try to beat file sharing at its own game. And I think they will. I think that music will remain a valuable thing for a long time to come, and that will be in no small part due to Spotify. That's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know. Post a comment. Anyway, that's all for this week's Music Nerd. Do me a favor, check out Elaine in Happy Fun Music Time and leave her a comment, a nice comment, but also a somewhat confusing comment. I think that'd be kind of funny. See if she figures it out.